Welcome to All Basket Hangout. I'm Geralf and this is Vandil. And our topic for today's discussion is...
Can you play your game wrong?
Yes.
Okay, end of discussion. Thanks for watching.
Immediate response. No, but really,
Yeah.
I guess to start that off, I don't know where to begin all that discussion, but I guess we'd have to define, or at least think about what is right or what is wrong. And I'd like to imagine that it's something that's somewhat context sensitive
Yeah.
and subjective to from whose perspective you're looking at.
Yeah, but if we narrow it down to what is it when you are wrong, it's an undesired outcome or outcome you're not getting, kind of. That's and in context of games, that's what being wrong would be, that you are not getting that goal you have.
Yeah. So in that sense, I guess it's very important to ask, why do we play games in the first place?
Yeah, it's someone would say it's for fun, to get a little respite from your long day's work. Some people do it for a living, but it's usually also about having fun. Do it for fun.
Yeah.
And someone might say, oh, well, horror games, are they for fun too? But it's actually for entertainment. You want to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
And it can be fun or...
Challenging or...
Yeah. Any kind of these emotions and experiences you can't get from your day-to-day life.
Yeah. And of course, what games actually are, they're like condensed success simulators, basically. So you get to experience that feeling of success of whatever it is, becoming a hero or experiencing maybe some sort of like playing in the Olympics or playing in a football or soccer team. Soccer team.
Some kind of.
Yeah. And stuff like that. So basically stuff that you would have to like train immensely. You can get an experience that, and it's not of course just games. Books and videos also sort of let you experience stuff from other people's perspectives and lives that you could never have by yourself. But in games, of course, it's much more personal because you're interacting with whatever is happening. You're not just reading or watching it. So my big take here would be that in the same sense that I'd say that a lot of people eat the wrong things, and I think that sort of ties in with this whole gaming thinking, that if you go to a restaurant, say, and the food you order at the restaurant, it's probably not healthy for you. There's something in it that's not healthy for you, but what you're deciding it on is whether it tastes delicious or not. So you think that you're eating the right things, you're eating right, but you're actually not. You just think like that. And I think it's the same thing for games, in that we go and we play some game and we think we're getting whatever we're getting, or we think we're playing it the right way, but we're not. If we maybe pushed ourselves a little to play the game differently, then in that case we would get more out of it.
But people too commonly use the word wrong when you could say you're not playing the ideal way or some other term. But this is human discussions we're talking about, and when people say, oh no, you're doing something the way I don't really like, you say you're doing it wrong. That's just how people tell stuff. They don't really like seeing like from when they watch a streamer, gaming streamer, play a game, and they are battling very poorly, and you are just, don't you see? It's right in front of you. If you just put two buttons together, it's right there in the tutorial, and he doesn't get it. Then you are very tempted to say you are doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's how people talk. But I think most important would be to separate that wrong word and think about what they are really meaning.
Yeah.
And now you are talking about playing the game wrong, as in not playing it the way that you could find most enjoyment for yourself.
Yeah. So in that sense, what is right and what is wrong? And if right is indeed, is it what you're personally trying to achieve, or is it something that's the best for you or would be the best for you? As in with the food example, are you looking something that makes you happy for that little while, or are you looking for something that makes you healthier in the long term, or what is it that you're looking for? It's the same thing with games, because I see it's just I guess this is more of a question of people playing the wrong games. But the thing is, if you're playing, a lot of mobile games have this sort of grind or systems that feel really satisfying to play. It's almost like eating junk food. Basically, you're doing these little quests and they tell you to log in every day, and they tell you to watch advertisement and all sort of stuff like that. And it sort of hits that little dopamine spike in your brain, and that keeps telling you that you need to keep doing this, even though you're not really having fun anymore, and you just don't really understand to stop that.
Yeah, and the sunk cost fallacy also comes into play. The longer you spend on a game, you start feeling like it's your obligation to continue playing that game because of the time you've already spent on it.
Yeah, I think that streamer example is pretty good in the sense that people are, when the chat is saying to a streamer that you're playing the game wrong, it's indeed it's more like, okay, you don't know how to play the game, or either you're not playing the way that I want you to play, which is why I as a watcher am finding it boring, or it's just that you didn't understand the mechanics, and that's why you're playing not wrong, but you're playing poorly. And of course, that all ties into the discussion, of course, how much should you have to, like, if it's a good game, you'd maybe argue that the player would have, the game would have to teach you easily enough to play the game. But then, in the same sense, I guess, if you look at any of the old games, the old masterpieces from the 80s or 90s, then all of those games would fail that test, more or less. Well, not all of them. There were some many easy to understand games as well, but there's also a lot of games that require you to read a lot of manuals.
But back in those days, you had that manual, and they had a little story, snippet of story, how you come to this world in this game. A little bit, what are you? I guess that's kind of the objective. In the good old days, in the manual, you have this little bit of story, and that tells you what has happened and what you should do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you should do. And then there's a couple of pages of the controls.
And then there's games like Ultima that come with these giant manuals with all the creatures and everything in it, because if you look at the game itself and you look at some sprite, and you can't tell that it's a crocodile you're fighting you. You can tell that it's some sort of green blob, and you just have to look at the manual and, oh, that's a crocodile, okay.
Yeah, but that's one thing I wanted to bring up for this playing a game wrong discussion, that those manuals, they kind of tell you what you should do, but that's very separate from the actual fact of the game and what it allows you to do. You can, as a game developer, do as much hand-holding as you want, but is it playing the game wrong if you are playing the game way differently than the game developers themselves intended you to play it?
Yeah.
As long as you're having fun with your game, and the developers are there watching you, maybe their stream and pulling their hand and wondering why you are playing it like that. Of course, good game developers would know that that means they failed. If there's something, if they are getting frustrated, they know that they failed to communicate their what they want people to pull out of the game or get from the game, playing their game.
Yeah.
But this is one of the... Is it wrong to go against what the developers intended?
I don't think so, because I'd say that there are multiple ways to play a game right, but there are also ways to play the game wrong. And if you're not being happy, or if you're not enjoying the experience and you're not getting anything out of it, and you're not improving yourself in any way, and you're just making yourself depressed and so on, then surely you're playing the game wrong. I'd imagine, in that sense.
Maybe at that time, at that point, it's the wrong game for you.
Yeah, possibly.
If the game itself doesn't give you any kind of satisfying gameplay loop.
Yeah, okay, that's the other thing. Like, are you playing the game wrong, or is it just indeed something you don't enjoy? It wouldn't matter how you played the game, you just wouldn't enjoy it. So those are two separate things as well. For example, there was this article quite some time ago about Ultima 4, where a teacher of some, I don't know if it was a science class or IT class or whatever, put their students to try out Ultima 4. And I think the teacher told them that, yeah, there's these manuals and stuff, and you're probably going to have to read them. So good luck and have fun and try to play the game. And what he found out was that the game was mostly unplayable. So none of the students could figure out any of the game. And it didn't even occur to them, even though it had been said out loud, I think, that they should probably read the manuals. And I mean, these are pretty lengthy manuals. And it's not just like a page that gives you the controls or anything, or the basic cheats. There's no cheat sheet, so to say. It's just a book. And if you want to get like the whole idea of what you're supposed to be doing, even reading that book doesn't necessarily help. It's going to tell you about the like the world and the lore and the stuff that they couldn't put into the game because there's limitations with graphics and the amount of text you can put into the game. So even that's not necessarily helpful. It's more like a game of its time, where you sort of have to understand how games worked back then, and then it's much easier to understand how that game works. In my youth, JRPGs were mostly on the Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Nintendo, and it was very normal that if you're in a house and you see stairs, you just walk your character on top of the stairs, and that teleports you or moves you to the top floor. But in games like Ultima 4, which came quite before those, what you need to do is you need to go on top of the stairs, and you actually need to press a specific key. Yeah, and it's not just, use key. It's not anything simple like that. You have specific keys for descending and ascending, moving up or down. And that it's just piling a ton of small things like that on top of each other that makes the whole experience really, really hard to understand. And in that sense, I can basically when we heard about these, what these students had to say about their attempt of trying to play Ultima 4, a lot of the people on the GameFAQs Ultima 4 forums were indeed saying that, what the heck, why didn't they read the manuals? They're playing the whole game wrong. They don't understand it. And once again, yeah, there's that problem. Were they really playing the game wrong? And if somebody had come and told them how you need to play the game in order to succeed, then would they be having more fun? Probably.
Yeah, this reminds me of the video we watched some time ago where the narrator put their wife to play some games and their wife doesn't play any games at all. And that was very evident that if you just throw a non-gamer into a game, they will not have that much fun in there because they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then when he decided to start giving her a little bit of hints and tips what you can do and maybe even go and play as a co-op with her, she started to have a lot of more fun in those games. So yeah, in that sense, if you are not having fun with your game, it kind of you are then playing the game wrong, in that sense that you haven't figured out what's the purpose of the game, what is the entertaining part of that game.
Yeah.
And then I can say for Ultima 4 that I also played it, and I could go through one dungeon. It was some cave where I went to, and there was this meditation spot, and somehow I found the meditation spots the exact sound I needed to write there. I don't know how I stumbled across it, but I could do that at least, and I read no manuals at all. So I found something, and I could talk to people, and I tried many words in case they give something. And some people gave some random stuff, and at some point there was maybe some staff of age and other staff of age, and I don't anymore know which of them is which. Is it honor and humility or something other? And
yeah,
but yeah, I could find some entertainment or get some progression out of it even without the manuals. I was a bard and started from where bards start, I guess, or is it the same place?
City of Britain. Yes. Yeah, so basically what she meant is that because of, as we mentioned, the limitations of the game, the point of the game is to find these runes and mantras and stones. And let's say the runes are hidden in cities, and if you, because there are, I don't really know where to start, but let's just, to keep it simple, there's these 8 virtues in the game, and if you find 2 runes, if you find the runes of honor and humility, then the game, I think it shortens them to rune of age and rune of age, because honor and humility both start with H. So yeah, that's the problem you had there.
Yeah, but that's beside the point of playing the game wrong.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting fun, it's kind of indicative that you might be playing the game wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily your fault. It's just the game doesn't itself teach it very well, or it doesn't give you any kind of simple tools at the beginning to start doing at least something to start getting the hang of the game.
Yeah.
Or in the case of these Ultima games, you are not living that time period, and the context of the games, it came at the time when Ultima 4 came out. It was more obvious, or it was more common knowledge. They had different standards and these unwritten rules, I'd say. But it's not your fault either way, not understanding how a game, 20, 30 years old game works, if it doesn't explain itself that well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I do think that all good games, or, well, I guess there are exceptions, but most good games, they have multiple play styles that you can well, I guess it is a game design decision as well. Like, do you allow multiple playing styles? For example, I think I've been playing a lot of Picross games, and there's differences even in those games, in that the way you want to solve a puzzle, a Picross puzzle. Some of the games want you to be as good as possible with the actual conventional Picross rules or hints, that all you have is the Picross square and the numbers and nothing else, and that's all you can use to sort of figure out which tiles you need to break. And then there are other games which sort of allow you an alternative road, which is that you don't really need to be all that great at actually figuring out the numbers. You can sometimes make guesses. You can just, well, okay, I'm not good enough in the game yet, so I don't know how to proceed from this point, but I'm going to guess that I need to break this block, and the game will tell you that nope, that was wrong. And now it's sort of, that information is added into the screen, and now you can use that maybe to navigate further. So you can, that's like an additional rule. And then there are other Picross games where you sort of see a hint in the top or the sideways line that tells you that, hey, there's something on this specific line that you should probably look for. So even if you don't know the rules or the hints specifically, you do know that you need to look at that specific line, and there's something you need to realize there in order to pass forward. So once again, it does depend on, from the game maker's perspective, do you make the game for those people who just strictly want to follow the traditional rules, or do you sort of make alternative possibilities on how you can approach those?
And it all comes down to the rules of the game, because every game has rules. And well, the goodness or badness of a game actually comes down to this, how well they tell you those rules within the game or with manuals, whatever it is. But the rules is what makes a game, and understanding those rules makes you be able to play the game efficiently. And more and more rules you get into your brain, then you get more enjoyment out of the game and get better at the game. You realize new stuff, and maybe the game gives a new rule. Oh, actually there's actually this one rule as well, and then you implement that into your understanding of the game's rules. So maybe the wrongness, playing it wrong, is about not starting to figure out those rules. Or maybe going against them. You understand the rules very well, but you decide, okay, these are the rules, but I decide to nonetheless go against them. I decided to specifically start up Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo system, and I only want to enjoy the jump button, and I never want to touch the D-pad. Are you playing the game wrong if you love just jumping your Jumpman up and down forever and ever, and until the time goes down to zero?
The time runs out.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you're enjoying it and you're getting whatever you would get from playing the game the way that the makers intended, I do think that's a correct way to play the game.
Actually, better one is because years and years ago I saw this funny video about two youngsters starting a Super Mario Brothers game for the first time in their lives, and they only used D-pad, and then Goombas starts coming up, and they just go to the left.
Yeah, they try
avoiding,
to run away.
Yeah, and they don't understand the jump button. They only know the D-pad. And then they die because the Goomba approaches them and hits them, and Mario is dead. So if you just decide, oh well, this is a shitty game because of that, then you played the game wrong. I'd say you stop wondering, maybe there's more to this game than just using the D-pad. What do these other buttons do? But I wouldn't say it's wrong. It's just you decide to not engage it more anymore and give it the benefit of a doubt.
Because I think the big thing there is that sort of threshold, because you mentioned that it's these rules that add up in your mind and you learn new rules and so on. But the thing is that there's a fine line that the game makers are sort of treading there with. You can't just give all the rules at the same time, even if they're simple. If the game is too easy, then that's not fun either. That's not challenging, that's not good. I think the best games are the ones that sort of manage to teach most people how to play the game in at least one or even multiple correct ways. And then there's some sort of hidden knowledge somewhere. So there's that stuff that can sort of make you go beyond somehow. And I think most Mario games, for example, are really good at that. If you take games like Super Mario Odyssey, if you look at the speed runs in that game, there's a lot of ways that the game makers didn't really they sort of give you these tools, but you can also use them to make these impossibly long jumps to make you actually reach places that you're not supposed to reach at that point, and stuff like that, which is just really, really great. But another example from our recent days is Street of Rage 4, because we did enjoy that game quite much, but at the same time, I'd imagine if we put somebody who's either hearing about or watching us play it, they would probably say that we're playing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the games where we just couldn't understand that, those sort of last pieces of the puzzle to make sort of like all of the game, I wouldn't say playable, but like
more enjoyable.
More enjoyable.
Maybe we could have played a few hours more or even 10 hours more if we had cracked all the basic rules that were essential to get all those hit streaks perfect and not getting hit by enemies perfect. It would have been very enjoyable. I know that it would have been. But is it a example of bad game? If it, well, maybe because it's not good when a game puts in a text box and says you can do this and that. It's good, if there's a tutorial mode, why not? But good games throw an enemy at you and then you go figure it out.
Yeah.
And Streets of Rage 4 also tried to do that. They brought out new enemies one at a time, not all the new enemies at a time, but we always encountered enemies we've already seen, and then would come some new type of enemy, and it actually tries to do that, throw in a new enemy, and we had to figure it out, but it didn't really promote or make us actually want to figure it out, because we could just brute force it or something like that.
Yeah.
It didn't challenge us enough in some specific or some way challenge us enough to really figure out this enemy before we can proceed.
Yeah.
That's the fine line you're talking about. How you make your players understand that, hey, there's this rule also, and now is the place you have to figure it out unless you will never proceed in the game or something like that.
Yeah. I think an example of like a positive alternative is that we played River City Girls also, well, I wouldn't say somewhat recently anymore, but like within a year. And in that game, every single screen just keeps throwing enemies at you, and there's just so many enemies that you keep doing these basic combos over and over again, and at some point you start to become good enough at that you start to try out different stuff, and you get so comfortable with like the basics and the basic attacks and everything that it felt much more natural for us to. It's sort of like with I remember my driving teacher used to say this, that when you're like a new driver, you tend to look at the like the near ground area, and then when you get more experienced driving, then you can start to look at all around you. And that's sort of the same thing with games, that in the beginning you really just, if the game allows you to, you're just mashing that attack button and probably not doing much else, maybe jumping every now and then, or blocking if the game forces you to block, or you just get beaten up.
Yeah, and now we're getting to the repetition part, because one would say that you cleared the tutorial, it told you everything you can do in the game, or you see your character to do all the stuff they can do, and then you forget what you learned in the tutorial, and then people in the chat say, no, don't you remember, you do it all wrong. The tutorial told you very clearly that you can shoot this there, and then it works out. But if you tell it only once, it will not stuck in people's minds at all. So it's not fair at all to say you're playing a game wrong if you just told it once somewhere and then expect people to remember it without giving them repetition right then and there, and repeatedly as time goes on and people progress in the game. They just, as a good game developer, you put that challenge once in a while there. Hey, do you remember this? No? Remember that.
Yeah. And because at this moment I can imagine, like, there's some game developers that understand that, and they're like, aha, in our tutorial you need to do the jump twice, and you need to do the dash attack twice, and now surely you will remember it because there's that repetition, and somebody will know, we will have to do it 5 times, and now you will surely remember it. And no, if it's just that, like, one tutorial, it's not going to help. You need to sort of enforce the game itself to sort of require you to either use it or something else. Once again, I don't really like using the word require you to use it, because in that sense, that's sort of pushing the player towards that, there's only one way to play the game. But you need to sort of, in some way, remind the player that this is there, whether it's in some way that maybe like in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I think every single enemy comes running at you, like immediately when the enemy comes, they just run to you and they start hitting you immediately. And that very quickly teaches you that you have to block. So you learn to do like good, perfect blocks and counters and everything.
It is frustrating until you realize that, but it is a fact that you need to get slapped in the face until you start realizing you maybe needn't get slapped in the face.
Yeah.
And like my martial arts teacher said, that for every single move, just a simple jab, you have to repeat it tens of thousands of times until it gets into your core, your being, and you can just bring it out instantly for when you need it. So it shouldn't be surprising that this applies to gaming as well. That just seeing someone do it a couple of times and then you do it 10 times, then you'd be able to just bring it out whenever you need it. It's not realistic to expect. But at the same time, the game shouldn't be that brutal that you have to immediately learn to be
perfect
that
at the game.
martial arts master
Yeah.
of game button pushing.
Yeah, I think that there's a very good combination, I think, when it comes to like teaching that kind of stuff with, I think, games like the Warriors series use that. You know, you keep fighting tons and tons of enemies, so you're getting that repetition of using those basic moves, and then every now and then you come across the some sort of obstacle that you're having a hard time dealing with, probably. Or if you realize something immediately, then you probably don't have a hard time. But if you didn't realize some sort of mechanics, then you do have a hard time with that. But now there's sort of this, there's already some sort of sunk cost fallacy going on over there, that you've already played the game quite a while, and you've had fun with it, and you've gotten good with the game, and now you meet this challenge, so you're sort of invested already, and you think, okay, I think I can do this. I just need to figure out, is there some button that I haven't kept using, and then you realize that all this time you've made through the game without using some special attack or some block move or some sort of dodge roll or whatever, and now your mind is sort of opened up, and it feels really good that, you know, now you can beat this boss because you got some sort of new weapon in your arsenal, even though you sort of had it all the time, but now the game more or less forces you to use that or use one of the other moves to really make it through.
Yeah, case in point, we just yesterday played or continued playing Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and there was this boss that, or a challenge attached to that boss required you to not use the hover or fly around. You had to, then you were stuck to just jump a single jump or using the dodge, which
Yeah.
I had forgotten completely about.
Yeah.
And it's a block also, you can block and then using a stick while blocking you do this dodge maneuver. So I guess that's a good example of a good way to remind people. And that's pretty far in the game, it's the third
Boss, yeah.
yeah, and that's until then you really, or you can play, I guess that you can play the whole game without ever realizing that dodge, but since we are these perfectionist people who want to clear all the challenges, and there was that challenge that required to not use the hover, so we had to start using the dodge more efficiently.
Yeah.
And now I remember, I don't know if I'm gonna use it anymore, but I remember there's this possibility of blocking and dodging.
Yeah. And so I think it's very important for the game to, before you get into that sort of situation, you need to have like enough investment or at least enough interest in the game that you don't just look at the challenge and be like, oh, I'm giving up on that.
Yeah.
And in our case, it was like the game had done a good enough job that we actually wanted to beat that challenge.
So I think we're coming to the consensus that wrongness, well, first it's subjective, or it depends on the context. What do you mean by playing a game wrong? And when you are playing the game wrong, maybe it's the game maker's fault more than your fault of not playing right.
Yeah.
That seems to be what we've been now talking about.
I mean, I guess we're looking at it through like rose-tinted glasses in a sense that there are a lot of people. I remember from my childhood these little kids who would like try a game and they didn't succeed immediately, and they would go and throw the controller away and run away screaming and so on. And so it is of course part of your personality to there are times when you're not succeeding, and it's up to you whether you say that, you know, I'm not having fun, I like refuse to give this game a chance to find whatever it is that I need to start having fun, or whether you just run out of the room screaming or stop the game or whatever.
Yeah, but that's just maybe you're having a bad day and you really
Yeah, that
don't
can
want
be
to
also.
deal with that.
Yeah.
It's people are very different during different times of their lives, or even during a day they have different moods.
Yeah.
Depending what they've eaten or what they said to their spouse or anything. Anything can affect our opinion of a game, or anything at all, and
Yeah.
that's just human nature.
And it's not just, this isn't just about games, but even whether it's games or work or whatever, there are sometimes like you're feeling or you're getting this feeling that I really don't want to do this right now. But then you start doing it, like you sort of force yourself. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna turn on the game and start with it, or I'm just, gonna open my video editing software and start editing the video. And even though you just felt like you really don't want to do this, but then when you start doing it, you're actually having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So there's also that. So of course, yeah, our mood affects all those things a lot. But and also I guess there's the barrier, I think, like even a lot of people, like for me, I can start Ultima 4 as many times as I want, and I'm having fun with it. I actually haven't finished the game more than once, but I've started it a lot of times, and I've had a lot of fun playing up to whatever point I played to. But for a lot of other people, going into the game blind, it's going to be very, very hard, because it's indeed from a time when game developers didn't really have that sense of, we need to sort of get the player invested enough, or basically the means to get the player invested back then. It was indeed, the fact that you bought the game and it cost a lot, and it came in a big box, and there was all these manuals and trinkets and everything inside, and there's a closed map, so you can look at, so this is what the world is gonna look like, and I'm going on an adventure, and now you're sold. But for a like modern gamer, you register yourself on GOG.com and you download the game and you start it, and you're like, what the heck's going on? And you make it through the tutorial and you're just getting bored, because it's just a lot of text and some images, and so there's what maybe got people invested back then doesn't necessarily apply today.
Yeah, but for someone playing the game wrong is just that, or only starting it and never finishing it, then never clearing it. That's just, it can be, this is subjective, and I'm not saying you're doing it wrong, but for someone it might be wrong to start something and never finish it up.
Yeah, indeed, and I remember quite a lot of people have actually said that Ultima games aren't supposed to be finished. You're supposed to start them, and then you're supposed to, this goes especially for like later games in the series, you're supposed to make your like sort of final save. And this is the part where you played the game and now you're just going to go on a rampage, like on Grand Theft Auto or whatever. You're just going to murder all the NPCs, and you're going to take their corpses and build like walls of them to build your own town somewhere in the swamps or whatever. Just build your own world like that. And so Ultima is one of those great games, I think, that you can play multiple ways, and just, starting it and never finishing it, that's one correct way to play the game, I think.
But that's one of the arguments of playing something wrong, that you are playing it the way it's not supposed to, at least in your mind, to be played.
Yeah, not in your mind, or maybe the developer's mind.
And in Ultimas, you're this paragon of truth, goodness, and everything. And then you go on a rampage. You are playing the game wrong. Essentially, you're not doing what you're supposed to, but the games allow you to do this, so it's not wrong. It's that. Once again, it's matter of what you define being wrong.
Yeah.
And well, this reminds me of many times we've had playing games when something happens in a game, and especially when I think we take a shortcut or do something, and then we look back to where we went through and see this road and ask ourselves, did the game developers intend us to go that road instead of us skipping from here? That's kind of this wrongness playing, at least in my mind. My mind, that maybe I did this badly for myself. I skipped something that game makers had made for me, and now I didn't enjoy it, and I just skipped it. And that's you're making yourself feel bad and feel that you did something wrong.
And I mean, in many situations like that, what we usually do is that even though we used maybe a shortcut, then we go back to the actual route and do that as well, because we want to see what was in there. Maybe there's some treasure to collect or whatever.
Yeah, in Breath of the Wild, I'm very sure there was many. At least I remember these boulders being standing on a very thin ledge that you can shoot an arrow at, and then they will roll somewhere. There were many these set pieces put in place, and I feel like we didn't utilize those that much. And didn't have fun with them. But maybe we skipped some additional fun with that, but you played it as you wanted to play it.
And I think the sign of a very good game for me especially is usually that sort of freedom, in that you've given a lot of tools and then you're just allowed to, make what you will of these tools. And I just think that's usually really great, because that, well, it gives me the incentive of, or basically the feeling that I'm playing this game the way I want to play, and there's not some developer god there looking and saying that now you need to do this specific thing and you are not allowed to do anything else or you will not pass, because that's one of the things that I really hate in games, when they're just pushing that sort of thing. And one other thing I really despised, I haven't played Nier Automata, but I remember somebody bashing it because they didn't understand the story, and somebody said that you're playing the game wrong. You're supposed to play it through 4 times, and that's when you understand everything, and that's playing the game right. And that just felt, for me especially, that felt like, what if I just want to play the game through once? I really don't.
I don't know how big of an incentive that game gives you to play multiple times. But that's very Japanese game. I get. Somehow I feel that there is at the end some kind of scoring system, how you manage the game and get some kind of award, and it's usually the bottom part of the award tier list. And you have to do something very exceptional in your next playthroughs, and maybe you're probably not gonna be able to do a perfect run in the first game playthrough, and the second playthrough, some probably, just guessing, will unlock something that you never even had a chance to doing. It is nice when a game gives you incentives to play it again, but it shouldn't be something like that, really. It should be. But everyone decides for themselves what they want their game to demand from their players. So, but I can understand that really playing 4 times, maybe 2 times, play it on normal and then in the hard difficulty, and then you get a true ending. But 4 times, and I think that 2 times is too much too. But I understand that you gotta reward your player base, or those who want to play it
the ones
again
who are
and
dedicated.
again. But should it be really something story-wise?
Because that's more or less the one of the things I really hate about some games, in that, especially if you sort of lock storyline behind like some really hard challenge. Like there are these bullet hell games, the Toho games, and in those I don't remember, was it Lunatic the hardest difficulty, because the story in all of those games is that there's an incident happened. Something has happened in the forest or the area that these people live in, and you as the main character go about your way to find like this mastermind behind it, and the only way to get to the bottom of it is to play the game on the hardest difficulty and really get there. That's sort of the one thing, and it's the same thing I guess with games like World of Warcraft. I think that World of Warcraft did a lot of things really well, but if you sort of want to experience the entire storyline of the campaigns, then you do need to have like this 10 or 20 or whatever amount of players for those like last raids, and you need to work on the like first raids to get everybody geared up, and then the second raids to get everybody geared up, and then the last raids to get everybody geared up. And on one hand, I do understand that there are some people who like that, but it also kind of sucks that it's specifically story which is sort of hidden behind there. And of course, they made it easier during the last 5 years, but especially back when I played, then it was, you really needed a lot of time and dedication for it. And not just that, but you needed to be a guild that had a lot of other people that were dedicated to it. Just so many resources to make it happen, to see one cinematic scene at the end of the game or whatever.
Yeah, we've been walking this little path from playing a game wrong to actually are you designing your game wrong?
Yeah. Or you could say, who are you designing it to? And what parts of it are you designing it to somebody? Because as we mentioned, I do also agree that it's nice to have something for your dedicated players, something extra in there. But like, I don't know if it's good to have like the base game be something that really requires you to be exceptionally good or whatever.
Yeah, I think when you have a dedicated player, you can guess that they are pretty or very knowledgeable of your game's lore or story or anything, or any inside jokes or anything. Maybe it should revolve around something around the knowledge of the game's world, kind of these nods to something the gaming community has come up with or something like that. I'm just reminded of the recent video we watched from Bro Jared, and he mentioned that there were these dungeons that are based on the previous games locations, and he said straight up that as a Final Fantasy fan he really appreciated those. He didn't, that's not the exact quote, but as a Final Fantasy fan he appreciated those nods to previous games. But if you haven't played those games, they tell nothing to you. And that's what I'm getting at with rewarding your dedicated players. It would be something like that, giving that sense of, I know this is something that only you as a player who has played it 50 hours can know, something like that, or get what the meaning of it is.
Yeah, I think because that's the problem, because usually those people who are really dedicated, I'd imagine they're less of a person who cares about the story itself. I mean, especially if you look at...
I'm talking about story. Maybe they get a hat of this inside joke that no one else gets. The rewards are... I think all cutscenes are very poor rewards, because that's just, hey, you played the game, here's a little bit of story for you. Yeah. And I'm getting at that the rewards need to be, if it's a game that has a lot of weapons or looter shooters, then the loot that you get as a dedicated player are something that you can wield with on your character, and everyone sees it and shit,
like a golden weapon or something.
Yeah.
Indeed, specifically that, because what I was about to say is that the people who get there, they're not people who know probably anything about the story. The people who cleared those big raids in World of Warcraft, most of them probably didn't know even about Warcraft 3 or the lore of World of Warcraft. No, not them were role players or anything. They were people who were specifically interested in the technical side of the game. And so that's indeed what they should be rewarded for, that they're something like a golden weapon or whatever, something really big, nice looking, something that they can appreciate as somebody who plays the game as a game and not as a universe.
Okay, I just realized a nice hot take here. You are playing the game wrong if you buy the special thing that you get with a very special quest. And I'm referring to FIFA games and all these games that are putting paywalls behind these items that are supposed to be very special, and the specialness comes from the fact that you are paying thousands of dollars for it.
Yeah.
But in context of those games, that's the real way to play the game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But as a curmudgeon like me, I'm saying you're playing it wrong.
I actually just realized, doing that, it's just, I mean, that's the line they keep feeding us, that, you can either put in the work or you can put in the money. So they're just giving us an extra option, right? So they're just giving us extra freedom or possibilities. So I guess in that sense, just giving the player more options isn't always the better thing. Or I guess, I don't know.
But the other option, the no money option, is something you're not having fun with. So it's, they don't say it's a wrong way, but they are very strongly hinting at it being the wrong way.
Yeah. So actually, I think that's where the line sort of goes if you look at these modern mobile games, is that, as I mentioned with the sort of the Warriors games and stuff like that, you put hours into it, you keep fighting those small monsters, a lot of them, and you keep learning the stuff, and now you have this
sunk
cost fallacy there, and now you come by that big monster that you can't beat, and now you try to come up with ways to beat it. But the way indeed that a lot of mobile games do this is that the answer is that there is no way to beat the enemy. There's no tool that you've overlooked aside from using money. And that's the thing that I don't like. You do need to give the tools to the player that they can do that, and not just by being this sort of ultimate genius and very lucky person, but anybody who has the tools can do the challenge or whatever, beat the boss, and not just throw money. They have to throw money at the problem, and then it gets solved.
But they are using the right kind of game design in there, that you are making the challenge harder and harder.
Yeah.
Except that the answer in the end is gonna be you have to throw money at it, when in a conventional RPG maybe the answer is that go grind or go buy better weapons.
Yeah.
And it's not spending money, but the game pushes you to start thinking, maybe there's something I'm missing or something I need to improve on to get further.
Yeah. And of course, even in those mobile games, you can grind, I think, in most of them, but it's just the amount of time it requires, as opposed to buying a JRPG and, okay, I lost to this boss, I'm just gonna go back and I'm gonna level 2 hours. Okay, now my characters are stronger, let's go and try that again. And now you succeed. As opposed to in a mobile game, you're like, okay, I can't beat this. I'm gonna need some items, I can either pay for them or I can play the game for 2 weeks to get them. And then I have enough to beat this one challenge, and okay, I cleared that. But now for the next challenge, I'm also going to need those items. So once again, I'm going to have to wait play the game for 2 weeks and then yeah.
And they probably even don't know it's gonna take 2 weeks. They just see a very large number, and their own number is so measly that it feels like it's gonna take an eternity.
Yeah.
Yes, you can design a game wrong.
Yeah.
But the sad thing is that the successful mobile games, they are designing their game right for the means they are trying to achieve there.
Yeah.
They wanna make people pay money, and if the money comes in, then they've done something right.
So if you look at it from a moral perspective, then it's obviously wrong. If you're looking at it from the players' satisfaction, then it's wrong. If you're looking at it from the company's
margin.
profit margin view, then it's the like correct thing to do. And I mean, of course, the players are, once again, I don't really know, because people do keep coming back to it, so you can argue that they're having fun, but more than that, it's just an addiction, I think. And for the most part, addiction isn't necessarily a good thing. Most often it is not a good thing.
And I think games like Nier Automata is kind of feeding that addiction too, by requiring you to play it 4 times before you get the true story, kind of. But because you're not losing money, it's not that ethically on the gray area. But you could say that some games maybe shouldn't be, or maybe some people. But we're not really in the wrongness discussion, or maybe we are, because at the beginning we started with talking about what is playing something wrong, and I just feel it all comes down to this: how well the game is designed. Is it making you able to figure things out so that you can play the game right? And if you are to blame, then it's just you're a human, that you are having a bad day and don't really want to play something right now, or try to push yourself through some hard path. Then it's not wrong. It's just you're tired. Maybe if you aren't even willing to give it a chance later on, then maybe you are a bit on the wrong side. But
maybe it's just a game type that you don't enjoy, or there's something. Because even for me, there are sometimes games that I start and there's something that's so off-putting. I think this was something that I mentioned just recently, that, if you look at like the greatest games that you can think of, as for example, in my case, Breath of the Wild was just incredible experience and easily like the game of the decade for me. But even in that game, it has like major problems in there, and it's more about just, are you willing to, or is everything else in the game good enough or great enough that you're willing to forgive those major problems and still have fun with the game. And if it's not, then
it's just a matter of how early those problems are occurring. If it's the first few minutes of your starting to play the game, or you're feeling awful, that's just bullshit. And case in point, Scott Pilgrim, at least I was having a bad time at the beginning, because you're low leveled and every measly enemy is hitting you hard. It feels very bad, but still we could look past that and realize that we are gonna get better. We're gonna get those characters leveled up, and it was fun to play nonetheless, even though it felt bad at first. Or worse than later, when we've learned a lot and we've upgraded or leveled up our characters so that they had more moves than the few basic stuff.
And that all ties into this. I think it's very important for games to have this. Whatever your game is, for the most part, it's very important to establish that in like the very beginning. If you're going to make a game that's hard, then it's very important that you sort of get that experience at the very beginning. So it's not like the game throws something very easy at you and then immediately after that the rest of the game is just very difficult. It's good that you immediately get thrown into some situation where you're most likely as a new player just going to die. And that helps the player to understand that, oh, okay, so that's the kind of game this game is.
Gonna be the rest of the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So I actually have to, I can't just leisurely walk and these enemies are going to ignore me. They're just going to kill me with one hit or whatever. And that means I need to be alert from the start. And when you go into that game with that mentality, you learn that mentality from the start, then it's much easier for you to sort of agree with the rest of the game or sort of enjoy it, because now you understand the basic concept that, yeah, that's the kind of game this is. And for me, especially games that change heavily at some part of the game, like Final Fantasy 13 was a really big turn-off for me, because I'm all about like open worldness and freedom and everything. But how Final Fantasy 13 does that is that there's like 20 to 40 hours of nothing but running through corridors. Nothing but running through corridors. Like nothing else. And then suddenly you're just, okay, here's this open new area. And at that point I was just so used to running those corridors that I didn't want the openness anymore. I was just done. That's when I just ended the game.
Even though it was arguably better, it got more open. It was something you like more.
I mean, if the game had started there, I would have loved it. It would have been great. And we haven't played Final Fantasy 15, but we looked through the playthrough for quite a bit, and it seems that that game does it the opposite way. So the start of the game is open world. You have all this world open to you, and then at some point it just becomes a very linear experience. So I think that's also a very bad thing to do. You shouldn't really change the, well, in some cases, like if you're a really brilliant game designer, then maybe you're able to do some change in the game that makes it something magnificent, like what Portal 1 did. But if you're not, then I wouldn't go changing the game that drastically, because it's just going to feel bad.
Only as an effect, I'd say, that you have a part of game, because gameplay is a very effective way to give a sense of the situation for the player, because I'm reminded of Metal Gear Solid 4, where it's this part where you have to move Snake, the main character, with just pushing the left and right buttons, shoulder buttons. It's that he's crawling through this radiation corridor.
It might have been just, tapping X.
Yeah.
I'm not completely sure.
But that's just trying to make the point of you could change it for an effect, but not that you're gonna... Here's an open world and now it's a linear world through the rest of the story or the gameplay or the game.
Yeah.
But those occasional effective moments is something I'm really interested that maybe game... Don't use them. don't use them if you're not absolutely sure what you're doing. But if you use them correctly, they are very effective in conveying this emotion or sense of gravity or something. If you have a very heavy story or something that really benefits from you changing the genre for a little while. Oh, now we're suddenly somewhere or playing it,
doing something else.
Yeah. But that's very difficult, so it's always better to stick with your game and the gameplay throughout the game and not change it unless you are very sure what you're doing.
And it feels like even like very big gaming companies are very much hit or miss with that sort of things. Like if you look at Breath of the Wild once again, there's this section where the game sort of decides that, okay, for this section of the game, you're always going to die from one hit. And that doesn't feel good or challenging or interesting or whatever. It just feels like bullcrap. It feels like
they didn't have enough content to satisfy you, so they had to make this little bit nerve in your character to make it a little bit longer, the experience, because that was a DLC.
No, this is in the base game, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so the
I'm
DLC.
thinking about the DLC where you are
Yeah.
taking one hit KOs or
Yeah.
dying from one hit.
Yeah, I think that was sort of okay, because
Okay.
that's DLC, but the part with the Giga Cavern, where it's
Oh,
suddenly you're doing like a
yeah.
stealth mission.
Oh, yeah, you get caught. Yeah. Was it dying?
I think it was just the
Okay.
enemies kill you with one hit.
Yeah,
And then they
Okay.
I think they also have extra HP,
Okay,
so
now I understand, because it really didn't... Because the DLC, what I was thinking about, it really... It makes it an event.
Yeah.
It changes, it shows you that, hey, rules have changed.
Yeah.
Changed.
I
But
think-
the Giga, or the part you are talking about, doesn't tell you that the rules have changed.
yeah. It's just like, okay, we're a stealth game now, and it's you're against enemies that you can come by, like in the world, and they don't usually like one-shot you, and it just feels really bad that the game, it feels like the game developer is just forcing something on you,
Yeah.
as opposed to even giving it, as you mentioned, there's no reason for it other than the game developer deciding that, this is the part where I, the mighty game developer God here, has decided that now you shall play with my rules, and it really takes you away from the game. It's like you're reading a book and somebody keeps slapping you in the face that, hey, you're reading a book. So
So you might have played Breath of the Wild for maybe 20 hours or 50 hours or 100 hours before you even get to that part, depending on how much you explore around the world before you go there, where you suddenly have to change the mindset. You have been playing the game right all the way through to that part. You've been some berserk brute, just going and hitting everything with your biggest weapon you have, and then suddenly you go to this place that suddenly says, nope, that's not the right way. That's not how you're gonna be this time.
yeah,
You're gonna become a stealth. And because it wasn't, I'm wondering how jarring it, because you liked to play stealthily somewhat in the game. You like to go behind the enemies and evade noticing, so even for you it was jarring.
Yeah.
And imagine a person who really likes to go balls to the wall with their playstyle, and then they go to this place that
Yeah.
requires to completely change the way you play. And maybe you are not even trained yourself to play like that, because you've always been that someone who goes and hits everything hard.
Yeah. And I think like once again, this is from Nintendo, which is a huge company and very known for making quality games and quality game decisions, and I guess also bad ones. But but just the fact that, I think it is a compulsory place, so it's not like it's a extra challenge or anything, and there's no, it was
No,
just really
very-
badly done.
Or we come down to what, because you can go and beat the boss right away in that game, so what's compulsory in Breath of the Wild when you start to think about it? Like,
You
it
can
was
drop-
tied to one of the divine beasts.
Yeah,
You had to
probably.
go get something from there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can theoretically, drop down to the boss or something like that. Of course, we haven't tried that, so I don't know if the boss appears if you do that.
Yeah, but compulsory in a way if you want to experience the story of the game and
I
what
mean, yeah,
happened.
yeah, sure.
But
course.
compulsory not in a way that you can clear the game
Yeah,
without
of
it.
course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's that option at least. You don't
Yeah.
have to deal with that
Yeah.
if you don't want to.
But yeah, still, could have been done better, like explaining the
Yeah.
stuff, like it's done in the DLC. Like, I'm fine with there's another challenge where you're basically stripped off from all your gear, and I'm sort of fine with that, in that it doesn't take away from your skill or from your play style, aside from the fact that if your play style is heavily dependent on what you've already gathered, which I do know at least one person who is very very adamant about the fact that what I've gathered is something that should really stay with me and the game shouldn't take it away from me, but still. But yeah, there's wrong ways to design stuff, and overall I do usually think that it's good to give the player options. Once again, coming back to the can you play a game wrong or right? I mean, I had this episode in my life where I thought that I wasn't very good at playing games, and so I would often or always pick the easy option if there was one. And I only later found out that when I did actually try those games on normal difficulty or even hard difficulty, I enjoyed them a lot more. So it was sort of, I made a conscious choice to play the game in some way or with some option, and I ended up actually suffering from it. The games didn't feel as good.
Yeah, that's something. Difficulty is something we could make a video about also, because that's something that's a whole another topic.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate thing about difficulty settings is that the game throws them first thing in your face. Very first, when you start your game, it asks easy, normal, or hard. And nowadays, hard might be locked from using, but let's say there's those three options. How can you say what difficulty you want to play the game in?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, nowadays you can change the difficulty mid gameplay, so you don't have this context of what easy is in this specific game.
Yeah.
And some games try to do it better by putting some kind of description that if you played these types of games before, then this is for you, and blah blah blah. And those help a bit, but yeah, so that's also. How can you gauge your level of expertise? Are you on the wrong? Should the games make it somehow easier to decide which one is best for you?
I think there's there's a good chance for some sort of small disruption there, I think. Well, I guess there are already a lot of games that don't have that difficulty setting, and they just, you play the game and the game itself looks at how well you're doing, and that works as the difficulty setting. But that actually reminds me of back when this game Shroud of the Avatar was being made. Richard Garriott, the creator of the Ultima series and of the Shroud of the Avatar as well, I remember he talked a bit about the problem with these big RPGs, big open world RPGs, and the fact that you start the game and then you get to this character creation screen, and you spend like possibly even 2 hours there, like making your perfect character, and then you start playing and then you find out that it's not actually a game you want to play. So, or a game that you don't enjoy in any way. And I think that's also, it's a problem that he mentioned, and it's a problem that he wanted to solve. But as far as I know, I don't think he found a way to solve that. So I think in the same sense, I guess with the difficulty, I guess the answer wasn't really to, or well, I don't know, is there a game that sort of just throws you into the game world and you get to experience sort of normal difficulty, and then it asks if that was okay, or if you want to up the challenge or whatever.
I don't know.
I think maybe a better system is something like what we've been seeing in Panzer Paladin. So yeah, it's a sort of a mix-up of Blaster Master and Mega Man. And what you do is you collect weapons in that game. When you defeat enemies, they drop weapons. And the more weapons you carry, the heavier sort of load there is on your character. And what that load means is it's basically just a number that shows whether it's low or normal or high. And if it's high, it means you have a lot of weapons with you and the game becomes more difficult, the enemies are more difficult. And if it's low, it means that you're probably not doing very well in the game. You're dying a lot or whatever, and so that eases the difficulty. So in that sense, it's sort of a natural way to implement difficulty, but one that you can also manage yourself, in that if you have a lot of weapons and that load is very high, then you can just throw away your weapons, and that brings maybe the load to normal or even low, and at that point the game becomes somewhat more easy.
Yeah, it's part of this designing games wrong, because if you design it wrong, then people will play it wrong also.
Yeah.
Or don't understand the rules of your game.
Last thing I guess I wanted to stress is that indeed there are wrong ways to play a game, and sometimes it's the developer's fault, sometimes it's your fault, and sometimes the preferred way that you want is not optimal for you. So I guess somebody could say that you're playing the game wrong, and you have to change the way you play the game to get more enjoyment out of it. And in that sense, I'd say that, if somebody's saying that you're playing the game wrong, give them a chance, I'd like to say, because they may be correct that there's some way to play the game and then it becomes more fun. Of course, it may be the developer's fault that they didn't give you enough information or whatever to sort of give those rules, those informations to you. Maybe you had to get it from some random stranger on the internet, and now you're a lot better in the game. And sometimes maybe to actually play the game right, to play the game in a way that you enjoy it, requires such insane amount of hours or so much practice that you don't really want to go there. So those are all tough decisions.
Yeah.
But that's how it goes.
But in the end, they're just games, they're entertainment, so you really shouldn't be too invested in this debate. It's an interesting discussion, but you really shouldn't feel like your life is worse or your life is ruined because someone said you play the game wrong. Maybe they are right, maybe they are not right, but we are just people using our words, and we are not very optimal our word usage. Sometimes they're saying you're not playing the game optimal way, or you're not playing the game as game developer hoped, or you're not playing the game as I, as your viewer, really would like to see you play.
Indeed.
And it all comes down to this one word, wrong.
So
That's
don't
right.
worry about it unless you're playing your life wrong. I'm pretty sure we're playing our life wrong, but it's okay too.
It
Because-
depends on the context again.
Yeah, it's very hard to define what's right. All right, that's it for this talk. We're the Owl Basket, and thank you for watching.
Thanks. Bye. Give us
Bye-bye.
comments. Give us your story. Have you played your game wrong? Have you gamed a game right?
Yes,
Anything.
tell us everything.
And what did you like about our discussion?
Yeah,
Yes.
all right.
Bye.
Bye.